Arrogant, throwing fits, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting the fool, this embarrassing is flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us. And y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Try to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defiant, can I describe it? Used to describe it as a young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. Hit every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face, and I ain't always been the smartest. But I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeves. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people. I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson. I'm a bison, a beast. I'm hot like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant. Tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retrofit. It gets so lit, I guess so, bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeves. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday. We get to do a little sports nonsense and whiskey hang with the fellas. What's up, boys? Robert Pinky. Cheers, my guys.
What's going on, guys? I've got blackberries and blackberry whiskey.
Slight overkill maybe, but still delicious. Can't be mad.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm happy. That's all that matters.
I need to get me a bottle. I
got to go back and get another one. I got 2. I'm halfway done with one. I got to go back and get another one. So.
Yep. No, I need to speak with Aaron.
I've never been a big Crown person.
Sam's. It's at Sam's Club. Do you not have Sam's Club?
Nope.
You think he has Sam's Club?
That's true. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Caleb,
What?
I wasn't trying to go there, but thanks.
No, I didn't mean it like you can't afford it or anything. I just meant like what single 20-something-year-old do you know that walks around with like a Costco or Sam's Club membership?
I shop at Costco.
Like,
yeah. Costco's too hoity-toity for me. I don't like it. I stick with the Sam's Club.
what? Hoity-toity?
Yeah, they got all that.
We're gonna.
They got way too much organic stuff there, and just like I don't like it.
Okay. I mean, I just care about free samples, so you
Yeah,
put those out everywhere, and I'm good to go.
And Costco's always so damn crowded and stuff. I hate it. So I'm out. I'm out on Costco.
Okay. All right.
That's where I stand.
Well, that's how we're starting Tuesday, guys. So buckle up. It's going to get real interesting real quick.
We'll see.
Costco versus Sam's Club. This is where we're headed this evening. Be prepared. Whatever the headline you joined in for, it's not happening.
That's what's going on.
So normally we don't bring our guests on for a little bit, but I do want to invite our guest in as we may talk a little nonsense, and I'll kind of tell why. But Caleb, are you clicking the button? Am I clicking the button?
I mean, you're introducing. I'm just checking things here. You bring the man on.
We've got our NBA insider, Greg Wiss, in the house.
What up, fellas?
What's going on, buddy?
Glad to have him on. Greg, I wanted to introduce you early because if we talk movies, which we normally do at the beginning, I always love to hear your take. You were one of the few people that when you talk about a movie, I listen. Some people's opinions I don't care about. I do care about your opinion.
Well, that's because I'm always right.
Oh. Fair enough. All right, Greg. I see you. I see this. All right.
He is a guy that when he comments on movies, I listen, and he's got a pretty good hit rate. We'll say that. A pretty good.
So,
hit rate.
is there a specific movie you're looking to bring here to the table, Pinky? Because there hasn't been really good movies that have been out lately.
There hasn't really been much out. I did see, and I don't know. I know Greg's got Apple TV. Greg, have you checked out Wolves?
I have not watched that one yet. That one's on my list.
Yeah, it's on
Apple
my
TV is
list.
always kind of like the last thing I get to. I never get to anything on Apple first. I always get to that stuff way later.
Oh man, if Napoleon is awesome. The director's cut is great. I just watched.
I turned that off after half an hour.
Understood.
I thought it was terrible.
Fair enough.
I haven't seen it. I got nothing to say. I'm so far
I haven't seen
behind
Napoleon
Greg.
either.
I do not have another 3 hours of this in me. Like, no way. Like, it had nothing that was appealing to me.
It was a lot. It was a lot. I'll give you that much.
Okay. Have there been any movies you've seen recently?
Wait, pause. Robert, Peter Dinklage is the star, right?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh yeah, then no wonder he didn't watch it. Completely historically inaccurate.
Listen, Napoleon wasn't a friggin' short person. I mean, he was short, but he wasn't a little person.
I'm just throwing out historical facts. That's all.
Robert's over here. 5'8" is average height. Don't discriminate.
Can't be size and stuff in here. Like, no discrimination.
Wolves was good. I think you'll like it, Greg. It's fun.
Okay.
Brad Pitt and George Clooney, they've got chemistry together, obviously.
No.
Dude, the ocean movies are classic.
So it's very much like that. They play off each other really well. So I think you'll get a kick out of it. And I think it's 2 hours or less, so it's an easy one to consume. I was going to ask, have you seen any movies lately that you thought were really good and maybe we should put on the list?
I just watched Caddo Lake on HBO. It was like a straight to HBO. It's produced by Shyamalan. He didn't write it, but it's kind of his style of movie. It's one with kind of a connection that you don't see coming. And like 45 minutes in, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this movie. And then I got to the end. I was like, I'm really glad I finished that movie. It was cool. I don't know if it totally worked, but for like just watching on HBO and killing 2 hours, it was a good one.
Okay. Sometimes I just want to be entertained. All right.
It's got a good cast, so I'll give it a watch. Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to see. There is a new Peter Dinklage movie. I think it's on Prime with Thanos.
Brolin.
Oh
Brolin.
Yeah, where they're brothers and shit.
And they're brothers, yeah. And that looks actually funny.
Oh,
so I was like, oh, it might be worth watching. Yeah. I don't know if it's like that, but I saw a preview for it, I think, Thursday night when we were watching the Broncos game. And I was like, oh, that looks fun. So I'll have to check that out. Anything else on that that you've crossed off the list this year so far, Greg?
But that's the most recent one I watched. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any others that stood out. So
might have to get you.
Transformers
1 is
that was
good.
We haven't really talked about that one, but that is a definite must watch.
I think Greg and I talked about it a little bit because he hadn't saw it. I still wish they'd had an actual soundtrack. That's what I remember from the original one. That like to this day,
like most movies, it needed more Linkin Park.
Absolutely. Who doesn't need more Linkin Park? Okay.
All right. Chill.
Oh boy.
It's never gonna happen.
We are straight fire this evening to get started.
Linkin Park just came back, bro. What are you talking about?
No, they did not. Let's not.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Zero chance. The only way Linkin Park can come back is the same way Sublime is coming back. That's the only way I'll accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're back.
No, they're not.
No.
I just told you the only way I'll accept it, and you just completely ignored what I said.
Just
as
move
per
on.
usual.
It's not happening. Linkin Park is not back.
Okay, fine. All right. Nonsense. Anything else?
The Penguin, amazing. Like, watch it. Watch it.
When it's done, I will.
You're lame.
Sorry, bro.
Lame.
I
Lame.
have Netflix has killed my. I can't do week to week. I have to consume it all at once.
L7 weenie. Like
no way, man. Like I don't have. Like I can't keep up if I'm trying to do week to week. I can't do it.
Yes, you
I
can.
will carve out time to watch a whole series in like 2 days.
Dude, Andy and I have been having a blast theorizing about this show, man, and that's part of the fun of it. Getting this week to week stuff, it's great.
Yeah, I don't need that.
I understand where Pinky's coming from. I've never been a big like binge guy. Like I can only consume so much of one thing at a time, and then my ADD or whatever you want to call it kind of kicks in, and I have to kind of refresh and get something new going. But I understand where Pinky's coming from. I don't hate that process, but I agree with Robert in the watching it kind of as it goes, and then being able to have those what if discussions and the theorizations and all of those things that kind of go with it. I kind of like that more because I like to.
But again, I'm also old, so my memory's going. So if
I didn't want to say anything. So as long as you're bringing it up, that's fine.
If I do it week to week, I forget what happened last week, and then I got to rewatch it again. And
hey, so I don't know if you realize, Pinky, but there are these things at the beginning of episodes called recaps. They're like a good night, like 90 seconds to maybe 2 minutes of things. Like I just want to say, like maybe if you paid attention, it kind of captures it all. So just saying.
No, man, I skip right to the episode because I'm binging it. I don't need to see the recap. I just saw it.
I'm sorry. I feel like I just heard that you're a bitch, but that's okay.
Wow, Robert is spicy tonight. Man, this is gonna be good.
Ooh, man. All right.
We'll have to get some NBA talk so he zones out. You know.
I mean, I have questions, Greg. I came prepared. Fuck you. I came prepared.
Oh boy.
I'm ready. I have questions.
A spicy Robert and Greg at his finest as always is going to be a really good evening. I am here for this, you guys. And it's not at me this time. Hey. Awesome.
Hey, the night is young.
True. Good point. Fair.
It's just getting started. Anyway, last bit of nonsense is Gladiator 2 is coming out. The reviews are starting to appear. It sounds like it's going to be one of the best movies of the year so far, which is saying something because this movie season has sucked, and one of the best movies so far has still been Dune, and that's really sad. As much as I'm a big Dune fan, I love movies, and I really hate that.
I am not a huge Dune fan, and yes, I would agree that is the movie of the year so far.
Dune 2 is definitely my favorite movie of the year, and I don't think that's a commentary on anything. Dune 2 is just an awesome fucking movie.
It really is.
It's not a commentary on anything.
No, it really is, and I'm really disappointed that there hasn't been more to come this season, because even with all the delays from last year, I really thought there were going to be some solid box office hits, and it hasn't happened.
I'm hoping the lull we're seeing right now is Hollywood getting back to business as it should be, which is creating original stories and allowing people to actually create and tell those stories rather than let's see how many remakes we can make, which is why I'm not that interested in Gladiator. To me, that's a standalone, leave it alone. It was perfect as was. No need to mess with it. So I'm obviously going to go see it, but I'm not. It's not like, oh, I can't wait. That there are certain things and certain entities I believe are so good by themselves that there is zero reason to tell any more of that story. And for me, that's what Gladiator is in that category.
Well, I mean, the same argument could be made though for the 300 series when you got Rise of Empire. I mean, 300 Rise of Empire was actually a solid sequel. And it built off of what was already told from...
Didn't even see it. You know why? Because that is a solo story.
It was solid.
The 300 is a story of historical significance. That's it. We don't need an after story what happened with 300. We know. They got their asses handed to them. And then they were done. We get it. Like, I don't need to be told that they threw some more people down the pit.
Yeah, I didn't see the second one.
It was solid. It was really good. I recommend it. If you haven't, definitely give it a watch.
Greg?
What?
Rise of the Empire?
I'm excited for it. Like, when I'm in the same boat as Caleb.
Not Gladiator.
Oh,
Rise of the
The
Empire.
300, the 300.
The 300
no,
sequel.
God no, that looked terrible.
Okay.
No, I never saw it.
I thought it was solid.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, Gladiator. I'm excited for.
I'm excited about it, even though I had that initial same reaction, like that was a great standalone. Like, why do we need a Gladiator sequel? But then watching the trailer, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go see that, and I'm gonna make sure I see it like in a big loud theater and stuff. Like, it's gonna be pretty cool. But
Greg, I got a question for you.
yes, sir.
What is your overall take on Snyder's new universe that he's trying to build over on Netflix?
No.
I have ignored it because it's been a very long time since he made anything worth watching. His movies are best reserved. His movies are best reserved for killing time on an airplane, or when you're really hungover on like a like Saturday morning or something. Like you just throw it on and just like doze in and out. Like that's the only thing that Snyder movies have been good for a long time.
Don't completely disagree.
Dude, Justice League wasn't that good. I don't care what anybody says.
I actually thought the Snyder cut was actually fairly good.
Hey,
and
I
enjoyed build that universe
enjoyed
out.
4 hours of Batman. Okay.
The Snyder cut was better. It still wasn't good, but it was much better than the original cut that got released.
Absolutely. But
I think it tells you how bad Whedon actually is.
Yeah.
I think it tells you how bad DC Universe is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I would have been interested to see what he would have done with his DCEU. I'm not saying it would have been great, but I think it would have been better than what we've gotten up to this point.
He did it. That was it. That was him showing you what he would do with it.
I know, and I mean, I thought bringing Darkseid in the way he did it was really good. I didn't hate any of that. His storytelling. Here's the thing I dislike about Snyder. I think his ideas, his spiderweb, if you will, is arguably brilliant, but he has no ability to take that web and then put it into an actual story. He can't write the paper, but he can give you ideas on what should be in the paper. So what he should be doing is, and I think I've said this in the past, similar to what Elton John had, and I'm drawing a blank on the guy who wrote all the lyrics with Elton John, but if Snyder could form that kind of partnership with somebody he trusted and somebody who could actually flesh out his ideas into a true story with dialogue, I think that would be a brilliant partnership, because what he puts on screen as far as the cinematography and everything is always been really good. He just can't write a dialogue that's believable. And I think that's what then is his ultimate downfall.
Yeah, his storytelling is just bad. It's just bad overall. So, yeah.
I agree with you, though. He has cool ideas and gets some cool shots. But, yeah, overall, it just doesn't work.
I mean, personally, the last best Zack Snyder movie was Watchmen, period.
And that wasn't good.
And it wasn't that good because the animated movies that that DC's been putting out this last year have put it to shame. They're amazing. And I'm excited for Chapter 2 to come out here later in like the next 3 or 4 months.
Call me crazy, but I enjoyed Sucker Punch. But that's because I imagine him and a couple other dudes in a room doing cocaine and coming up with, like, what is the coolest stuff we can have in a movie? Nazi zombies, prostitutes with samurai swords, all these cool things wrapped into one. Like,
never saw it.
You never saw Sucker Punch?
Zero interest.
It's worth a watch.
It's worth a watch, dude.
It's not. It's not.
It's worth a watch, but
yeah,
if you like cool stuff, it's worth a watch. If you liked Rebel Moon, you got to give Sucker Punch a try.
You got to give Sucker Punch a watch.
I don't like it because of the story. I like it because of, like, I'm a sucker for anything new sci-fi that builds some kind of crazy universe that you can kind of lose yourself in. So I can kind of remove myself. I can remove myself from the bad storytelling and still enjoy the idea of this supreme power within this universe, and they're able to travel from planet to planet and things of that nature, and the visuals that he has within it. I can kind of lose myself in that and ignore.
But he has
a bad
if you
story.
watch part 2, the amount of time that you watch in fucking slow motion is like half the fucking movie. It's so bad.
I mean, honestly, all I hear when people bash those movies is the same people who complained about the prequels of Star Wars when I sat there and said, I love them all because it gives me more Star Wars universe. And people hated them. And it wasn't until fairly recently that all of a sudden the Star Wars fandom started to love the prequels. So
I mean, I won't disagree with you on that, but I don't feel the same way about
That's
that.
only because the new 3 are worse than the prequels, so then it made the prequels look better.
No,
But-
it's because adults now were children when those prequels came out, and they loved them because they were kids' movies.
Yeah,
That's the main reason the discussion has shifted.
I mean, no
I
discussion.
think what made the
best
prequels-
Star Wars movie is still Episode 5. Like, there's no question. Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie.
I think the reason everybody started liking the prequels is because of the Clone Wars. I think had the Clone Wars not been
more
made,
substance, absolutely.
the prequels wouldn't have picked up steam the way they did. But the Clone Wars was so badass and great storytelling,
so good,
that it tied all of that together in a way that everybody finally went, "Oh shit, okay, yeah, now we're kind of understanding this." So had that not been done, I don't think it would have. I don't think it would be as favorable within the fandom as it is now. And I don't think it has anything to do with the last 3 movies, personally. I think everybody just kind of looks at those and wish they had been scrapped and remade immediately. But we don't need to rehash that by any means.
Well, Caleb, with a lot of the pages that we're now with on the page, that Star Wars Underworld had been posting a lot of the original concepts of them going to Coruscant and it being abandoned and things, and it was just that idea itself was just beautiful on its own, and they really should have gone with that storyline instead of what we had gotten.
Look, I got nothing against Rey. I don't think her story was told very well, but I have nothing.
It sucked.
I don't have anything wrong with them introducing those characters. It should have been a separate start to a new trilogy, if you will, because
Rey should have never been related.
There was no reason to tie that into the Skywalker saga. There's just no reason to do that.
Not my Skywalker.
I mean,
all right. Well, we've spent way too long on nonsense.
You started
normally,
it. Normally
happens.
Shut your mouth. I'm not done yet. Great. So,
damn. Wow.
Star Wars night, baby. Let's go. That's why we brought him on.
Is it?
Yeah, that's the wrong guy to talk Star Wars with. I mean, he can do it, but
that's me.
I mean, I can talk some Star Wars, but you guys probably won't like most of what I say.
Oh, they don't like what I say most of the time. It won't be any different.
Sorry, Caleb. We rectified that situation already. It's fine.
Let's get down to business, Pinky.
Now Pinky zoning out.
Yeah, man. Let's do that. Yeah, I was done with Star Wars already. I was like, let's move on. Because we can go down a serious rabbit hole anytime you guys start talking Star Wars. Well, we got Greg in here for a reason, and it's to talk some NBA. So let's start that conversation. Caleb, I mean, you're more on the NBA than I am. Where do we want to start? Where do we want to go?
Let's start here, Greg. East versus West. I think it would be fairly accurate to say the East is almost just one team with a couple kind of maybe in contention, whereas the West looks like it could be loaded again. But as we saw last year, that faded off a little bit. So what are your takes on those two scenarios, East versus West, kind of the pecking order, if you will, in those conferences?
Well, first I want to clarify, what do you mean it fell off a little bit last year?
I feel like what we thought was going to be a really strong conference 1 through 10, I feel like that bottom half by the end of the season didn't really feel like it was on the same level as far as truly getting to the Western Conference Finals, if you will, as compared to where it was at the start of the year. Sacramento was looked at really highly. They kind of stumbled a little bit towards the end of the season in the playoffs. LA, injuries, things of that nature, they didn't really gel. The Clippers being the Clippers and everything that they dealt with. I just feel like it kind of wasn't as strong as it was predicted to be at the start of the season. Not that it wasn't better than the East overall, just maybe not as competitive that maybe we expected it to when the playoffs rolled around.
And I think when we look at like the playoff picture, it's a little bit different. I think overall, as far as the strength last season in the Western Conference, I think it was as strong as it's ever been. There were 2 46-win teams that missed the playoffs in the West last year, bringing the total number of 46-win teams to miss the playoffs in NBA history to 4. Last season, it doubled, and it was all in the Western Conference. Like the Western Conference, yeah, the records may not have been as high as like Boston's 64 wins, but that's because they all had to play each other all season.
Absolutely.
So they were all cannibalizing wins from each other. And I mean, it was just brutal last season. I mean, you mentioned the Kings, right? So the year before, and for anyone who doesn't know and can't see the sign, like I'm a Kings fan. The year before, they had 48 wins. Last year, they had 46. They had been the 3 seed the year before, and then they ended up in the play-in as the 9th seed and missed the playoffs. Like it was night and day difference as far as how strong the West actually was last year. And it's set up to be the exact same this year. I mean, Boston again looks like a juggernaut. I don't know if anyone was watching before we started this. They whooped New York's ass, like just ran them off the floor and looked dominant. And that was without Porzingis. So they are going to be a juggernaut, especially in the East, where they're going to just rack up wins against a lot of the weak teams. But the West, I think, is going to be the top to bottom strength again. I mean, there's going to be some decent teams in the East as well. It's not all Boston, but it's Boston's to lose. Something really has to go wrong for
I got a team in the East that I really like.
Yeah.
I like the Orlando Magic.
We're not there yet. Way to just jump ahead, Pinky. Appreciate that.
No, you're right. I like that team.
You're not wrong, though. They should be a good team this year. I mean, they finished up, they were like 5th last year and in position to be better this year. I think they're going to be a really good team. They're young and scrappy. I don't think they'll make a lot of noise in the playoffs. I don't think they're there yet, but regular season, they should be a very good team. Some other good ones in the East. I mean, the Knicks, despite getting their ass kicked, I think they'll still be a good regular season team. The Cavs, I expect to be really good this year. The Bucks are kind of iffy for me. The Pacers should win a few more games than last year, but they're still a little iffy for me. But I mean, there's some decent teams. It's not like there's one team and then a bunch of like 40-win teams.
What do you see from Philly?
Philly, when healthy, is going to be very good, but they're going to be healthy like 35 games this year. So I think that they're going to be probably in the bottom half of the Eastern playoff bracket, and if they were in the West, they'd probably be missing the playoffs.
Are we? I know Robert wanted to talk about the Embiid situation.
Mm-hmm.
Is he done?
What do you mean by done?
So when you have a player that's considered this elite now saying that he's not going to play back-to-back games, isn't that what you're paid to do? Like as a player, isn't that what you're meant to do?
Oh yeah, I think it's complete bullshit. And I mean, anyone who wants to go look this past week, Kevin Garnett went on a rant on his podcast with Paul Pierce, and they rambled about like just how you're paid to play 82 games and then the playoffs. Like if you need time off, like don't play the Olympics, don't do all these off-season things, don't do all this extra. Like what your job is to do this. And I don't like the load management thing, but it is what it is. Like he has given up trying to maintain that 65 game threshold, so he's not going for individual awards, which I actually think is great because he was way too in his head about awards for so many years. He cared way too much about the individual accolades. And so now, as much as I don't like that he's not playing as much, and I think he should play through, because I think either you can or you can't, he's doing this now because he wants to try to stay ready for the playoffs. But in my mind, you're also not preparing your body for a playoff series.
Not at all.
I got a slightly different take on that. I think there's enough history, especially within the modern NBA and the way the game's played now. I think people are dismissing the physicality in today's game. It's not man-on-man physicality, but the wear and tear on the body with the amount of motion that is in today's modern NBA that was not there 20, 30 years ago is going to take a toll, especially on those bigger bodies. And it's been proven over history that they're not built to consistently move at that rate for those many minutes. So if you know your body can't handle it and it just is what it is, I'd rather see him sit when need be than become the next Greg Oden, if you will, and watch your body completely shut down and no longer be able to play at all. So if you can extend your career in a sense that, okay, you can only play 55, 60 games, but you are available for the playoffs. Now, Greg, you make a good point. Will the body truly be ready to handle an intense, brutal 7-game series? You know, that's something that they're going to have to find out. But I would rather see my star player play a little bit less regular season and still be able to finish the season rather than try to play all 82 and then not be available at all when it matters the most.
No, because it improves on reliability as a player.
Some bodies just aren't meant to hold up. It just is what it is. That's through no fault of the person. Now, I will caveat that with the fact that I don't know what his offseason regimen is. And if he's not spending $1 million+ on his body like LeBron James has for years, then he's doing something wrong. You make that much money, you can afford to invest back in yourself. And I'm surprised more players don't do that. But I don't know what he's doing in the offseason. I don't know if he's truly trying to do the type of workouts that are going to allow him to be effective throughout the season. But I do see where some bodies just aren't built for it.
I mean, Embiid was drafted. He's now entering, this will be his 11th season since drafted. He has averaged 43 games per season over the course of that career.
Now, does that count the first 2 years that he didn't even play?
It does. Yeah. It does. I'm counting
that
those.
Skews it a little bit, but I understand where you're coming from.
He missed 2 years of his career with injuries. Like,
I get it, but that's another reason why I'm like, if you can minimize those some way, and you think this is the way to do it, it would be foolish not to do it.
Could we at a point where his knees are just shot from how many different knee injuries he's had?
He's had so many leg injuries. I mean, his legs in general. And I understand that he cannot hold up to the wear and tear. Like, that's kind of where we're at. But to me, that also means that you can't count on him to make it through the number of playoff series it takes to get to an NBA championship. Could he do it? Yes. He could, pick his spots through this regular season and then do it in the playoffs. But, like, him playing that many games at high intensity in a row, like, it's hard to say that he could hold up for it.
So
would you say that in this case, would it be a better situation to retire in that case rather than play?
No, it'd be stupid to. They just give him a massive extension, like, for the absolute max money that he could get. Like, I don't fault him at all. Like, milk that as long as someone keeps cutting the check. Like, there's no benefit to him retiring.
I'm going to keep playing 40 to 50 games a year, and I'm going to make 50 million or more. Like,
he is going to be Patrick Ewing on the Orlando Magic and the Seattle Seahawks with, like, ice packs taped to his legs while he's playing. Like,
it's still, I think from the team perspective as well, he is still one of the top 5 talents in the league. So it's not like this is a dude who can't play and is always injured. And I think that's, for whatever reason, people don't want to consider that as part of the conversation. This is not some talentless or guy on the decline when it comes to his play on the court when he's on the court. He's still a supreme talent when he's on the court. So how do you maximize that time?
He's right up there now with Kawhi on the when healthy all-stars, where when they're healthy, they're among the best in the game. You just can't ever rely on them. And that makes it really tough to actually build a successful franchise around them.
Now, Kawhi is someone who I think should be considering retirement. And that's strictly because by all reports, and his camp's done a great job of keeping things hush-hush. What's truly going on, they have done an amazing job of not letting that information leak out. But reading between the lines, as much as you can, and then trying to make your own judgment call or assessment, I think he has 0 cartilage left in his knees. Yeah. Like, I think that's what it is. And if that's truly what it is, he is done. You might be able to get 15, 20 minutes a game every 2 months if that's truly the case. Like, that's brutal, and there's no coming back from that. There's nothing you can rehab to make that better. So if that is truly the case with him and that's what it is, he should be thinking about retirement. Different situation.
It is crazy though, because like last season, Kawhi played 68 games, the most he has played since San Antonio. Like,
yeah,
and then he just completely got shut down when the playoffs started. Just wild scenario.
Yeah, and just the timing, like he pushed through, and then broke down again. Like that was a hard beat for the Clippers, but I mean, like credit to him, like he tried, like he played very well, but his numbers were still less than they had been before because he was playing all the time and nursing things and fighting through things. And so it's like, is it better to be great for 30 or 40 games a season or really good for 60 games a season? Like, I don't know.
Those are two players, man. If you're a fan of those two teams, I feel like you're just hopeless. Because they've just proven that they're not going to be healthy come playoff time. You can't.
I think but here's the thing that it comes down to, and this kind of goes back to the larger point we were talking about with like, you know, the strength of the East, strength of the West, this and that. Like at this point, the NBA is so much about injury luck and playoff matchups. You know, all the predictions that we do, all the analysis we do through a season, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to those two things. Who has the injury luck in the playoffs and who has good matchups. I mean, you look at like the Pacers last year dealt with a lot of injuries throughout the year. Halliburton was like limping along, just trying to meet his 65 games so that he could hit the contract bonus criteria. Like they were like not a great team because he was playing at like 50%, but then they got healthy before the playoffs and they hit like every opponent was just decimated by injuries and they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Mavericks, like they were not a great regular season team until post trade deadline, but then they got lucky with some matchups. They were healthy. They made their run to the finals. Like, you know, at the end of the day, it was still Boston who was healthy and a great team, but you know, it goes back to the matchup piece. Like it's all matchups and health luck when you get down to the end of the season.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Which makes things so hard because you're like, oh man, they're really great now, but you know, injury bug hits anybody, it's going to take a pretty big toll.
Mm-hmm. Let's move out west. I want to start with a team that I think is consistently underrated, and it's strictly due to their star having giant question marks when it comes to injuries, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. What do you think is their ceiling if they can be healthy come playoff time?
See, the issue I have with the Pelicans right now is that health is only one of their two issues. Their other issue is that roster is just a mess right now because they couldn't move Brandon Ingram like they planned to this summer. They have two centers on that roster right now. One is Daniel Tice, who is 6'8" and is a decent backup center, but not a solid big man center. And then they've got a rookie. That's their entire center depth. And they don't want to play Zion at center because they don't want him to take the toll of trying to defend centers. But they lost Jonas Valanciunas to the Wizards in free agency for nothing. They lost a couple other guys on their depth, like Najee Marshall, who was huge for them last year just as a depth piece. And they still have a lot of players I like, but they also lost a bunch of depth when they traded for DeJounte Murray. They lost like Dyson Daniels and I mean guys that don't jump off the page as like stars, but were such a huge part of why the Pelicans were a pain in the ass to play last year. I mean the Kings, just because of like the in-season tournament and weird scheduling quirks, ended up playing them 6 times last year and went 0-6 against them. Like basically Pelicans single-handedly cost the Kings the playoffs last year. And what was so disheartening every time you'd play them is that they were a team full of big, long wings. They had a big body center down low. And right when you thought you were getting a break because they were subbing out, like 5 more guys of the exact same style and size and skill set would come in. And it would just like crush you because you never got a break from their defense and their shooting and their length. And they've lost so much of that. And it feels like a team that was trying to reshape itself and got halfway there and stalled out because no one wanted Brandon Ingram. Like
fully agree.
So
fully
if
agree.
if they can do a move before the trade deadline, which I think that they definitely could, like Brandon Ingram's still in play, they could move off CJ McCollum. Like they have pieces that they could move, but if they don't do that, I think their ceiling's pretty low.
So
Actually,
I know Brandon Ingram from watching Pelicans and fantasy basketball and certain things like that. What's the issue with Brandon Ingram? Why does he not fit with that team?
it's not that he doesn't fit with the team. The issue with him and why they're looking to move off him, and the reason no one wants to trade for him, is that he is coming up this next summer as a free agent and wants a max extension to stay. And he's a very good player in the current NBA environment with the apron penalties and all that. He is not a player that any team wants to give a max contract to. That's
Especially
the only
with
issue.
his injury history.
It has nothing to do with his skill. Like skill-wise, he's a really, really good player. He's not a great defender. He takes too many twos when he should be taking threes. Like there's some issues, but he's a really, really great player. He's just not at that level where it's worth handicapping yourself as far as the apron penalties and all that.
I've kind of always looked at him as like a Jason Tatum light almost.
That feels
He doesn't play
disrespectful to
defense
Jason
as
Tatum,
well.
but yeah.
He doesn't
He
quite
said
have
light.
the
He
same
said light.
offensive skill set, but he's like, if you're trying to look for that type of player, he's like that low grade of that. It kind of plays the same parts of the court. Like he could improve so much more and be so much more capable of all the things he has. You just haven't seen that complete growth, if you will.
I mean, he's a tall wing with like a big wingspan. He can score on a whim. Like scoring wings are valuable in the NBA. So like there's a lot that should be really valuable about him, but he's just not quite there because of things like the decision making, the 3-point shooting. Like, he can't space the floor for you. And even though he's not a terrible shooter from deep, he just doesn't do it. He doesn't want to. He'd rather dribble into the mid range and take the shot. So he's kind of like DeMar DeRozan, but worse. Like he just doesn't have that crafty skill set and reliability to make that mid range reliably. Now, if he got to that level of efficiency, no one would care and they'd happily max him out. But he's just not there.
What are teams in the West that you're excited for?
But you seem very excited, Pinky.
Avs scored again. With
Pinky's
8 seconds left, Nathan McKinnon, baby. Let's go.
Pinky's just pumped to talk about Western Conference teams. So I mean, when we're looking at the West, I mean, I've mentioned how stacked it is. I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder look to be really, really good again. Probably going to lead the West in at least regular season wins. I still have some questions about their playoffs because they kind of got exposed in the playoffs last year. Like, I think they might be a better regular season team than playoff team, but some of that is also just they're young and you need that experience. So they could take that next step.
I think part of it's also they've almost got the same dude replicated like 6 different times. So come
but
playoff
that can
time,
be good.
I'm not saying it can't, especially in the regular season, right? But come playoff time, like you're saying, they kind of got exposed. I think that was part of the issue. When you get into those 7-game series, and if you've got all the same type of player for the most part, it allows teams to be able to coordinate their defense in a much more efficient and easier manner, if you will. So they could still use it to their advantage with like you said, they're young, a little bit inexperienced, if you will. So they could maximize that to their advantage possibly. But I think that might have been the issue last year. So it'll be interesting to see how they run that back this year and what kind of changes they might make to it.
I'm excited for just Chet continuing to get better. I thought Chet had a really good, in all regards, his rookie year. Mm-hmm. I think he can get much better, and they're scary to me.
They made 2 amazing offseason moves. I mean, trading Giddey for Caruso is a huge upgrade because Giddey was basically unplayable. Like Giddey's elite skill was passing, but he couldn't do anything else for you, and he became such a liability they just stopped playing him in the playoffs. Alex Caruso is a great defender, can space the floor, like ultimate role player. So that's a great addition. And then Hartenstein solves a lot of their issues with like size and toughness down low, rebounding, defense. So 2 great additions to really address their biggest
And
weaknesses from last year.
I loved watching Hartenstein play with the
He was
Knicks.
great for the Knicks.
He's not going to
think
want the ball. It allows you to move Chet to power forward instead of center, and it it kind of eliminates a lot of what I just talked about. So, but that lineup has to work, right? So how well does that gel, especially with SGA being as ball dominant as he is, and not necessarily in a bad way. I don't ball dominant. I don't use it like as a hardened term, if you will.
Yeah.
But is ball dominant. So how does that play with the pieces and the spacing and movement, like you just said? That'll be interesting to watch.
Nights that SGA is on, they play really well. Nights that he's not awesome, they struggle. At least from what the games I paid attention to last year.
Nights when he's on, he scores 31 points a game. Nights when he's off, he scores 31 points per game. Like, it's crazy how clockwork he is. Like, good, bad, or whatever. Like, his points per game is like always the exact same. Like,
what do you think about Minnesota's moves?
I was just gonna bring up Minnesota. So that one's an interesting one to me because I think that they have a really good chance, like, to actually be. I mean, everyone's kind of jumping on the Thunder, and I get why. But I think there's just as good a chance that Minnesota ends up the best team in the West and could be the team to emerge from the West to the Western Conference Finals. Like, I question the timing of trading Karl Anthony Towns 3 weeks before the season, like day before training camp opens. But overall, I do think it was both a move that they needed to make for long-term cap reasons, but also it really toughened them up a little bit. Like Randall and DiVincenzo are like tough guys. They're part of that kind of Knicks toughness from last year. Like, and there's some spacing issues with Randall and Gobert. I don't love that pairing, but like, I think there's ways that they can try to figure out how to make it work. And I think that they've got really good depth. They've got a lot of good pieces. My big concern with them is really just their point guard depth. I mean, behind Mike Conley, they don't have a lot of kind of playmaking guard work. They've got a lot of good players. And if Anthony Edwards continues to grow, like, that could be an amazing team this year.
I will say my initial gut reaction when that trade went down was Knicks won this. Not by a landslide or anything, but my initial reaction was Knicks won this. And then as I sat down and started thinking about it and kind of pen to paper, if you will, two things came to mind. One, they just went all in on Naz Reid and McDaniels and their ability to grow and mature within the game and their system. Two, what you just said. Gobert's weak and just threw it up there. They just gave him a contract extension. I think that's a terrible idea and a terrible move. I don't think he's a good defender, especially on ball. He's awful. But whatever, Greg. We're not going to go down this road. I'm just going to tell you how.
Okay. I'm not a Gobert fan, but like Gobert's the one thing he is good at is defense.
No, he can rebound and block shots. He got exposed in the playoffs as an actual defender, and even France said the same thing come the Olympics. They sat him when it mattered most. I don't think he's worth the money he's getting paid to be the best defender in the league.
I think you have to run a very specific scheme to prevent him from being exposed, and sometimes you have to adjust scheme in playoffs, and that's where he becomes unplayable and you have to pull him out. I mean, Nuggets did it to him 2 years ago, right? Like, just destroy. So I'm not saying he's perfect, but like, just because he has limitations and schematic deficiencies, like, he's a good defender. Like,
I will say average. Defensive player of the year, I've just never seen. I just don't. Rebounding and blocking shots to me does not equal a great defender. You know, you look back on great defenders, Rodman could play somebody on ball. He could guard man on man. Gobert's not guarding anybody man to man. He's getting smoked when it truly matters. So I've never been a fan. I don't think he's as good as the money and the awards say. That's my take. I would have personally let him walk and moved him and truly built more towards the Naz Reid and the McDaniel. McDaniel and Naz Reid can play defense, and they can almost play 1 through 5, both of them, depending on the matchups. I like Randall coming in as that tough factor, if you will. Their best lineup to me does not include Gobert on the court. And I think that's where I draw the biggest issues with his capabilities, and he's a liability on the offensive end. So if that's really all you're getting, I think I just kind of add all that up to overrated compared to what his accolades have said he is. But the other move I really like that they made was the drafting of Shannon, and that offense, that long wing, and his defensive capabilities. I'll be interested to see where he slots in if he gets the playing time within that rotation, because it is deep. So where he could slot in, I could see a scenario where you run Ant at the point and you run Shannon out of 2 when Conley can't be in there, and then you're looking at, you know, a Nas Reed and McDaniel lineup type situation. And I think that could be really interesting as they progress.
I think 2 other names I'll throw out there for Minnesota before we move on, because like I can see Robert like falling asleep over there. So Rob Dillingham, rookie they drafted. Basically, like I watched like a couple minutes of him coming out of the draft. Like that dude's like the next incarnation of Malik Monk, like just a clone on the court. Like just as far as that like microwave scorer, which they really needed off the bench. I'm excited to see what he can do. You know, rookies usually don't make a huge impact on a championship contender, but it should be fun. And then he's old, he's long in the tooth, but I really like them getting Joe Ingles this summer. Like I think that just another steady veteran shooter, some more spacing, like just another just kind of smart veteran depth piece. So the next team, we've gone a really long way without talking about the Denver Nuggets.
We knew you'd eventually get there.
I mean, eventually we got to get to the dregs of the West, right? But that was for Pinky. No, I get why everyone's like a little down on the Nuggets after the offseason, because I agree. Like, I don't really think that Calvin Booth has managed things very well the last 2 years now. But I also think that maybe people are still sleeping on the Nuggets a little bit. Like, they still have Jokic, who won't win another MVP just because no one wants to give him a 4th. But, like, will be absolutely in the conversation as far as being worthy. And you still have Aaron Gordon. You still have MPJ. You still have Jamal Murray, although his health seems a little questionable right now. If they can get anything from their young guys, like, you know, the Strother and Watson and Brown, like if those guys can step it up a little bit, the Nuggets could be right back to being kind of a powerhouse. Like, it feels like everyone forgets that they were tied for the second best record in the West last year. They get talked about
they were tied for the best record because all 3 teams.
I'm sorry, yeah, tied for the best. But they get talked about now like they were like a 5 seed or something.
I think the biggest question mark, and I didn't like the move, and I hope I have to eat crow on it, because I can see a scenario where it just fits beautifully and all the pieces come together and he finally changes ever so slightly the way he plays the game, and that's Russell Westbrook. As a second unit leader, if you will, there is opportunity to where he could be maximized. I don't like the fit. I didn't like the signing, but it's hard to ignore how excited Jokic is to play with him. And when Jokic speaks, you should listen. And if he feels the fit is really good, and look, honestly, Russ has never been a bad locker room guy. Like, you've never heard anybody say Russ was toxic in the locker room. All you ever hear people say is he's a great teammate. But for whatever reason, his fit on the court just doesn't seem to jive. And if there's ever a scenario where that could fit and change, it would be playing with a guy like Jokic. And just the way he manages the game, and his style rubs off on everybody. If that piece fits in the way Jokic has dreamed of in the offseason, they could be scary good. But I think it's a huge question mark in that scenario. And you really are relying on all these young guys that Booth has built his reputation on. And right now, the only one that seems to be worthy, if you will, of those accolades is possibly Struthers. He did have a great preseason. He has shown quite a bit of growth. The kicker, though, is if these guys aren't going to play defense, you're going to lose a lot of what made the Nuggets so good.
I mean, but that's what Brown and Watson are actually pretty darn good at, is playing defense. So,
but when you're a liability on the offensive end, it then limits. KCP wasn't a liability on the offensive end. Brown wasn't a liability on the offensive end like these guys are. And the thing that I love and hate about Christian Brown is, while he is a good defender, he's a good defender in effort, not mind. KCP could see the court and read it in such a way that he put himself in great positions to affect the play on the defensive end. I mean, Brown does that all out of just sheer hustle.
I mean, but you're also talking about a guy that's been in the NBA for over a decade versus
you can
Brown
over hustle. You can over hustle and be more of a liability than you are a help. And if he can't take that next step in his thought process and learning how to not use all your energy all the time and just put yourself in smart situations and positions, that could be a detriment to them going forward.
So when I look at Denver, the big advantage I see from Westbrook is that he's going to bring a hunger that it seemed like the Nuggets were missing last year.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the problem with Westbrook is he often misplaces that energy and just isn't efficient and makes poor decisions and just has not contributed to winning basketball for a few years now, even on a bench role for playoff teams with the Clippers. But I do think the issues when I look at Denver is just that they don't have the depth right now.
They're 4 dudes and then everybody else is a question mark, right?
No, I mean, like, I would say they've got a reasonable 9-man depth chart right now. But not all those guys are proven to where they're going to contribute every night. And if one of those key guys goes down, you're screwed. And with Murray already kind of being a question mark, that's the biggest issue, right? It's just that. So I think that there's plenty to question there, but I think that the Nuggets are going to still be a lot better than people are expecting, just because it feels like people were very eager to bury the Nuggets after last season.
Yep. What is your take on Bronny James? I'll give you mine and you can blast me if you want, but I think he has the capability. I'm not saying he's there yet, but I think he has the capability of becoming a great 3-and-D in this league.
I would agree if he was good at defense or 3-point shooting. You just talked about like being good at defense on energy, but not in application. That is Bronny on defense. He's a hustler, but he's too small. You want to talk about like systematic fits? And I say this because I'm going to take this back to the last couple of seasons of Kings basketball. Davion Mitchell. Fantastic one-on-one man defender against point guards. But in the NBA, so many schemes rely on switching, especially around the screens. And as soon as you have to switch, he's on someone too big for him. Bronny James is going to have the same issue. He just does not have the size to keep up with anyone bigger. So he's extremely limited in what he can do and how you can use him defensively. And talking about 3-point shooter, like if all he made was threes, like great. He still was a 6-point per game scorer in a crappy college team. He is nothing but a nepotism hire. No, that's what he averaged last year, was 6.2, I think, off the top of my head, 6-something points per game. He is nothing but a nepotism hire. He would not have been drafted if it wasn't for who his dad was and what his name was. And even then, he would have been drafted, except that it worked out the Lakers had such a late second-round pick. If the Lakers had, like, the 35th pick instead, they wouldn't have wasted that on him. They would have drafted an NBA talent. Like, it only worked out because the situation and everything was orchestrated. And like, I'm not rooting against the kid. I just have zero belief in him turning into anything other than something that wastes our time on SportsCenter for the next 2 years.
Love it. Love it. I think he's awful. I think he's awful. I don't think he's going to turn into anything. Maybe his other brother will turn into something. I think I've heard he might be pretty good.
Bryce is bigger. There's definitely some talent there. Look, Bronny's got a 6'8" wingspan. He is smaller. His frame is smaller. The switches could be the issue. But I do believe, and I'm drawing a blank on the name I was thinking of as far as his comparison. But I do see the potential of where he can easily become that solid 3-and-D guy. So I give him a pass for last year. USC was a mess. I think that was proven by the fact that they had the number 1 recruit in the nation, and he looked awful all season. He had the cardiac issue, and that caused a lot of issues for him to even start at USC last year and play. So we'll see. I mean, he could obviously be nothing, but I do see a lot more potential than I think maybe he's given credit for, because everybody's so focused on the fact that he only got drafted because of his last name.
Real quick, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I need to correct myself. Bronny James averaged 4.8 points.
I was going to say it was lower
season.
than 6, but
yeah,
still in the ballpark.
6 sounded like a lot to me. 6 sounded like a lot.
3, 4, 5, 6. He had 7 teammates average more points than him on a crappy USC team. The leading scorer on that team was Boogie Ellis, who went undrafted. He averaged 16.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists. He was signed undrafted to the Sacramento Kings, played really well in Summer League, shot over 40%, was shooting well, scoring well. He ended up not making the team and is now looking at either G League or Europe. He's deciding between those. That's where Bronny James should be if he was anyone else. Like, if he was anyone else, honestly, he just would have gone back to college for another year to try to prove himself, because he did have such a crazy season with the cardiac issue and all that. It's just, honestly, it's unfortunate for him because he is not being set up for success in any way, because he's got all this expectation, none of the time to grow as a player, develop his abilities. Like, it's just a crappy situation. And so much of success is also based on, are you in the right position to grow your skills and succeed? And he's just not.
I mean, let's be honest, Greg. How hard is it for any child to grow up and have your dad be one of the greatest basketball players of all time? That pressure, because everybody assumes you should be good. Like, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael Jordan's kid has it right. Like, don't try to be a professional athlete, go off to Italy, do drugs, like, do your thing, right?
I mean, they did try. They just, Jordan didn't draft them, so they weren't coming to the league. And if I remember, Marcus, I think it was Marcus, had a decent college career at Illinois. He was by no means a slouch in college.
Yeah.
But playing at that
he was
next
no
level,
Bronny James.
They quickly realized that they weren't ready for the next level. So, sticking with the Lakers, what do you think about JJ?
I'm fascinated by what's going to happen.
That's a great word.
I think it's very funny that everyone's like, "Oh, Lakers going to be better." I mean, JJ's going to start their best lineup. It's like, yes. Darvin Ham was an idiot. He should have played their statistically best lineup. But their best lineup is really just like playing Rui Hachimura more, and like, he's a 5 player, but it's just Rui. It's not like some world-changing guy you're putting in the lineup. Like, it's just a guy. It's like, yeah, it's a better lineup than what Ham was starting last year, but that team still doesn't have depth. They're still reliant on 2 aging superstars who both played a ton of games last year, and the team still wasn't good. And now those 2 superstars just spent all summer stressing their bodies playing in the Olympics. Like, I don't think JJ can fix all that. Like, I don't think the Lakers are going to be very good. I think they're going to be worse this year. I don't think it's necessarily going to be JJ Redick's fault, but I don't think he's some magic fix just because he had a podcast with LeBron.
Did they hit their ceiling last year?
Like as good as they could have been?
Yeah.
I think if they had a better coach last year, they could have maybe been a couple of games better. But they did so many offseason moves last year to bring in like kind of guys on the fringe. And they set them all up on these deals where it was a good deal if those guys hit, but like none of them hit. It was like Jackson Hayes, and I'm struggling to remember some of the other names. There was
Thomas
a
Wood
bunch
or
Christian Wood.
Christian Wood.
There was a couple others too, but like they were all kind of the same sort of thing. Whereas a bunch of guys were like, you know, the name, they hadn't done much. They're hoping one or two would hit, and then they'd be okay and have some depth. But none of them did. And all those guys are still on the roster. Like the roster for the Lakers hasn't really changed at all. And I don't think JJ Redick, as a rookie, first time ever head coach, is going to be good enough to make that not an issue.
They re-signed LeBron, right? Was that like
LeBron?
a 2-year deal, or I thought they re-signed him, or is that coming up next year?
I believe this is the last year of his current contract.
So the thing is, because there's a new thing in the CBA now called the over 38 rule, where once you're over age 38, there's limits on how long your contract can be. So they might have extended him, but even still, he wouldn't have that long left. Just because there's limits on how far out you can push those contracts. LeBron, after this year, LeBron has a player option.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it is anything past that. So it's more or less, it's almost like year to year at this point. Like after this year, they could extend him another year, and they probably will if he wants to take it. But it's basically just they're going to keep giving him the max that they can year by year until he retires.
I know Robert's got a couple questions, so I'll finish up with this. What is your biggest one or two storylines that you're excited for as the season gets going right now?
Robert.
I mean,
on the clock, Robert.
What am I? Wait, what's happening?
Draft, buddy.
You're drafting, I guess.
Son of a bitch.
So I think one of the biggest things, I think one of the biggest stories that we haven't talked about that's near and dear to my heart is just what's going to be the fit with DeMar DeRozan and the Kings. I personally think that's a big upgrade over Harrison Barnes. It kind of shifted some guys around. So I'm excited to see what the Kings can do. I think DeMar DeRozan is still a really great player and a lot of fun to watch. And they went 0-5 in the preseason, but I care about preseason almost as much as I care about anything else. But
what does it do to Keegan's growth or his fit within that offense?
So the funny thing about it is I think that really Keegan just slides over. He's going to play basically power forward. He'll be able to do a lot of what Barnes did on offense, just kind of pick off that corner three, which he was great as his rookie. But he's also now had time to develop other skills like breaking down off the dribble or attacking the paint. And so he gives them more versatility, because if Harrison Barnes caught the ball for three and the guy closed out, he just passed out. He didn't attack anything. So Keegan can now attack the rim if a guy closes out too hard or make the extra pass or whatever. Like, he's not going to be as one-dimensional. He's also become a phenomenal defender. And more than anything, honestly, like, the numbers this year might go down, but long-term, him getting to learn from DeMar DeRozan for a year or two is going to be pretty awesome, like, for his long-term skill development.
I like that.
I'm not too worried about it. I think one of the big issues with the Kings last year is it was like, okay, you got Fox and Sabonis. Can Keegan be the third star? And that fell a little short. And it wasn't that Keegan was bad. He just wasn't at that third star level. So taking that pressure off, letting him be the fourth and continue to grow and develop, I think is a good thing. The other story I thought was worth discussing. Oh, there's a couple. I got to pick and choose here. Well, Robert, you had some questions, right? About the NBA?
Yeah, a couple questions that I had was like for some of the players that are coming up right now is who would you pick as kind of the offensive and defensive MVPs right now? Like what are your insights into that for this next season with what's happened in the off season?
So you're talking like who will win MVP, who will win Defensive Player of the Year, that type of thing?
Exactly.
So I did a quick rundown on Twitter the other day of kind of who I think will win all the major awards. I think Luka gets MVP this year. I think it's kind of his time. The Mavericks,
Absolutely.
They kind of made those moves at the trade deadline last year, and they were such a better team after that. If they maintain that, and he keeps putting up the big numbers, I mean, he nearly was averaging a triple double with 33 points a game last year. It was just absurd. So I think it's kind of his time. I think he had a very strong case for it last year, but I think with added team success, it'll be his turn for MVP. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm glad you asked about that because the like betting favorite right now is Wemby. And Pink and I were talking about this the other day. I think it's absurd to predict Wemby winning that award. Not that he won't have the stats, but no Defensive Player of the Year comes from a bottom 10 defense. And the Spurs as a team, despite Wemby, are still going to be a bottom 10 defense. They were terrible on defense last year, and there's no reason to expect them to be better. So I don't know. I just don't see it. I think if you're looking at Defensive Player of the Year, I mean, realistically, it's usually a big man. Sometimes it's a wing. I think that kind of my long shot pick, and it's probably not going to happen, but my long shot pick is Drew Holiday because I think the Celtics are again going to be one of the best defenses in the league. And when you look at kind of who's the tip of the spear on that defense, it's Drew Holiday and then to a lesser extent Derek White, and they could kind of cannibalize votes from each other. But I think Drew has also been such a great defender for so long that voters could get behind that idea of like, let's recognize him. In a similar vein, I think that the Magic are going to be a really good defensive team again because of their length. Jalen Suggs just got his extension. He's going to be a phenomenal defensive point guard. I don't think he'll get it just because he's young and there's so much legacy that goes into these votes. I don't think it'll go to Suggs. So my pick is Drew. It probably won't be right, but I also don't think it's going to be Wemby. That's kind of my long shot prediction on that one.
Fair enough.
Crazy thought. You talk about the Spurs being a bottom dweller again.
Not a bottom dweller, but defensively, they're not going to be a good defense.
I hear you. I have this crazy thought, and just as a fan of the game, I would love to see this happen. The Spurs fall on their face. They somehow end up with the number 1 pick. Cooper Flag goes there, and we see the modern-day version of Duncan and Robinson. And that, to me, would be epic to watch those two play side by side together.
That'd be terrible.
You say terrible because you know they'd be good, right? And you don't want to see that?
Yeah, like Cooper Flag needs to go to the East. He needs to be on an Eastern Conference team to balance the conferences somehow, even a little bit.
Who's the worst team this year?
Washington.
I mean, Washington's going to be there. Brooklyn's going to be there. Portland's going to be there for the West. I mean, someone will be hurt. The thing is, like, with the lottery odds, though, you don't have to be the absolute worst to get the guy. Like, the lottery odds are so flat. But, I mean, yeah. Between Hornets, Wizards, Nets, Blazers, like, those are going to be your 4 worst teams.
Those are all awful teams.
That's the point. Like, this is how a team can get better.
So this is why I don't want to see Flag go to basically anybody in the East that's going to be bad. Portland's a question mark when it comes to this, but they are such poorly run organizations that even a Cooper Flag, I don't think changes their direction because they're just so terribly managed. And I don't want to see such a great talent end up playing for such a trash organization when it probably just means he leaves when his deal comes up.
I hear you, but I also heard those same arguments for so many years when the Kings were just awful. And it's like, it's a self-feeding cycle. And yes, like a lot of them are poorly run organizations, and I don't like that we reward that. But at the same time, like, who else is going to Washington? Like, how else does that organization get better if they don't get an influx of talent? Or any of these really. Like, so it's like, and as far as him leaving, like, if you draft him, you have him for 7 years. Under the current system, you are not losing him before 7 years. It just doesn't happen. So that's enough time and enough of a talented player, you can change an organization. So,
God, Charlotte just sounds awful to go to.
Here's the thing: Charlotte's just so poorly run, but they do have some, like, they've got some talent.
Ball, they have some talent for sure.
Who's running Charlotte at this point?
Well, it's sold.
It's
right?
No, but the GM is Kupchak.
Yeah, and he's not.
No, he's not. Any other questions? Because otherwise, I'll just do like a rapid fire rundown of like a few of my takes on the season, and then you can tell me if there's any I need to expand on.
Go for it.
I got one.
Yeah.
What rookie should we be watching this season?
Reed Shepherd, Houston. That dude was awesome in the preseason, and I think he's going to be really great.
He's from Kentucky, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And Kentucky guards are always better than what you think because they were poorly used. Like, that was Calipari's legacy.
Yeah.
Calipari's legacy is that, like, pretty much all their players, especially their guards, ended up having much better careers. Like, look at
you already mentioned one of them with Minnesota, right? And everybody's excited there. So, absolutely.
So many of them. So, I'm excited for Reed Shepherd. I think he'll win Rookie of the Year. Zach Edey's going to be interesting with Memphis. He's going to get a lot of opportunity. I think he's going to struggle with the speed and foul trouble and things, but he's such a big dude, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. The kid who went first, Rizese, to the Hawks, I don't think he's going to be great. Like, it's a rough year to have to be the number one pick, but I think he's going to get some opportunity, and I think he'll be a decent wing player. Like, he's not going to live up to the hype of being number one pick, but he'll be a good player, I think.
All right.
That's what I got for rookies.
Hit us rapid fire, Greg. What do you got?
Rapid fire. I think the Warriors are going to kind of suck. I think that it's kind of a mess. I do not trust Kerr to manage a rotation that is that unclear. I think the Rockets are going to be okay, but I really hated that Jalen Green contract they just gave out. They overpaid him, but made it short term. Like, rookie extensions, you overpay, but you do like 4 or 5 years to where if they do develop, like, you've got a good player on a bargain the last couple of years. With that contract Houston just gave out, they're going to have to pay him in 2 years if he ends up being good, and they're going to have to pay way more.
And not playing Seguin seemed weird. I felt like that was...
They paid him.
I know, but I guess I shouldn't have said it that way. It seems like they're not backing him the way that they're giving him the contract for. For whatever reason, something seems off with him and the team.
They played a little hardball, but I think the value he got was fair. I mean, like, 5 years, 150 is a good value. Somewhere 155, something like that. Like, it's a decent value. So I don't think it's a bad deal. I think the Clippers are going to be pretty bottom tier. They'll be lucky to be in the play-in. I think they're going to be really bad and have no... That
goes down. That lottery pick goes to OKC. Let's keep that in mind.
That's the crazy one. You talk about, like, get the Spurs flag.
I know.
There's a chance
ends up on OKC. That would be disgusting.
Oklahoma City has a very clear path to the number one overall pick if the Clippers are bad enough.
That's gross. So gross. I mean, Presti's a genius, right? Is there a better GM in the league right now?
If they get flagged, we need to lock up Presti because, like, the man should be in jail. Phoenix Suns, I am actually surprisingly high on. I think that they probably win the Pacific. Some of it is dependent on health, particularly around KD. But I think KD and Booker, and I think they did a really nice job with depth, and I hate giving them props because I don't like the Suns, but I think they did good, and I think they're going to be pretty solid this year. We talked about the Spurs. The Jazz are going to suck. Memphis, I'm very curious to see what they do with folks trying to get back healthy. I'm not super
Hold
high
on.
on them.
Will Ja Morant make it through the season?
Nope, that's part of why I'm not super high. I think that 2 years out of basketball has an impact on your durability and everything that goes along with it.
Can Edie play in the modern game?
I talked about Edie. That I don't know that he can handle the speed, and I think he'll have foul trouble. And
I didn't mean to question like you didn't. I mean, throwing out there as like a big question.
That's just another big question. Yeah, because outside of him, I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. is already hurt, not going to be playing in their season opener. Like their big man depth is pretty weak right now. A couple other random quick hits. The Bucks are either going to be competitive or a complete disaster. I'm really high on the Cavaliers this year, and
why?
Same reason I was high on them last year, but I was kind of a year early.
I think going from JB Bickerstaff to Kenny Atkinson will be enough of a 1-year bump. They have continuity with the roster. They're just improving the coach, and there's a lot of opportunity for them in the East, especially. Like they've got a good team. Like they're a little
Garland, Mitchell.
They're a little mismatched as far as kind of how they all fit together. It's tough to play like your 4 best players at the same time in crunch time with the way they're currently set up, but overall, I think they're a good team. I think Detroit will be sneaky. I think they have a chance at like the play-in.
I don't think ask you about Cade Cunningham.
Oh, I'm really low on Cade. Like I'm a little higher on Detroit overall this year, but so my big Cade hot take is that he is not a number 1 and probably isn't actually a number 2. But he is going to have tremendous success in the second half of his career when he becomes some team's Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon spent a lot of years struggling, expected to be the number 1 for the Magic, and then he got traded to a good team where he was the number 3. Boom. Magical success, accolades, all that. Like, it's not a knock on Cade. I just don't see him as a number 1 guy. I think he is the perfect number 3 guy on a great team.
See, him and Bonchero are the 2 young dudes in the East that I've really got my eye on to see how they perform this year.
I like Paulo, but he's got to get more efficient. Like he's not efficient at all right now, and that hurts them. But I really like him overall. I think I've got takes on any team we want. I think the Pacers are overrated. I talked a little bit about their path to the Eastern Conference Finals, but yeah,
full show.
That's what I got.
Who's in the finals?
Basketball is back.
Who's in the finals, Greg? Or I mean, that's really crazy to talk about, but who's in the finals?
I mean, if I'm picking now, I'd pick Boston and Minnesota, but it also plays right into my pet peeve of people just predicting things based on what happened last year, because like the NBA has shown us year over year that things are wildly different every season, and yet every year everyone like last year at this time everyone's saying like I don't see how Denver doesn't repeat, and like now everyone's be like I don't see how Boston doesn't repeat. Like we never learn our lesson.
Let's talk about that for just a sec, because there's a lot of talk out there in the media that Boston didn't really play anybody in the playoffs. Most of the Eastern Conference opponents they played had injuries, really major injuries to really good players. Mm-hmm. And then they played a Mavs team which looked less thin. Are they like? Do they need to play like a Timberwolves or Nuggets to like really put that stamp on their championship in the finals?
No, I don't buy that type of narrative. Like you play who's in front of you. That's all you can ever do. And I know that's hypocritical when I just criticize the Pacers for it, but the Pacers were pretty clearly a not great team that lucked into an easy path, and then when they ran against a good team, got just run over. The Celtics were a really good team who didn't have a healthy challenger in front of them, but they also just wrecked everyone in front of them every step of the way like they were supposed to. I mean, we can talk about the differences in conferences, and I do think that factors in, but they were still like 7 games better than anyone else in the league last year, And that was with them having such a comfortable cushion that they stopped caring about regular season, like 20 games left in the season. They were just that good and just that dominant. I mean, I think that Boston is a superbly constructed team with great depth and guys who are all really bought in. And it's annoying as hell because I hate the Celtics.
Well,
Have we ever seen a coach go from the bench to the front office so seamlessly?
Oh, here's another thing that I love talking about. So I love Joe Mazzulla being a head coach because the dude's insane. And that dude would have never made it through like the multiple rounds of head coaching interviews. They'd have been like, this dude's a lunatic. We cannot hire this guy as our head coach. But because Udoka like couldn't keep things under wraps and all that, like, and the whole situation blew up, and they had just lost some other assistants, like suddenly Missoula's like thrust into this role, and he's a good coach, and he's a crazy person. Like he had, I don't know if you guys saw the media day quotes. I think it was yesterday or maybe today. He was talking to media, and he's just, they're like, do you worry about like the pressure of like, you know, the media questioning you? And he's like, they don't have a gun in my face. Like, he's like, that's not pressure. Like,
Damn.
he's like, none of this matters. We're all gonna die, and in 40 years, none of you are invited to my funeral. Like, it's like, that man is nuts, and I love having him in the NBA.
oh, buddy.
I just realized, though, Caleb, your question was about Stevens, though, wasn't it?
That's all right. That's all right. Well,
No.
I like the Mazzulla talk. Just a quick point on Mazzulla. He's doing things that I'm amazed more coaches haven't done. And I love when people reach outside their own sport and try to gain additional knowledge and information that they could implement within their own system. And him talking to some of the greatest soccer coaches in the world and their strategies and how they game plan and how they shift their lineups to certain matchups, I think it's invaluable information that personally I think did show within the finals and the way they handled their business against Kyrie and Luka, and him being able to implement those things from Pep and things of that nature. So yeah, crazy person, but sometimes those crazy persons, it's that genius that you have to let just kind of do their own thing, and then magic happens. So it's amazing that Stevens was able to see that and allow him to take the position and run with it. And then just what, you know, everybody talks about Danny Ainge being a genius, which pretty much is. And I'm still really excited to see long-term what he can do with Utah. But him moving from the coaching, and damn good coach, and then decided, I don't really want to do the coaching thing anymore. I want to do the front office. And he picked up where Ainge left off and then ran with it. And
Caleb, you're on the clock, by the way.
Is crazy.
Well, I will say, you're on the clock, Caleb. But the other thing I'll say is that while he's been great in his transition, and he hasn't really missed since he moved to that position, he still has a long way to go to be considered the greatest to move from coaching to the front office.
Right. We got Riley and some
other
guys.
we got a bunch of guys who have done it and done it just as well or better.
Absolutely.
Like,
do understand. Not trying to be hyperbolic by any means. But I love what his transition has been. From college coach at Butler to now what he's doing in the NBA as a coach to the front office is rarely seen. Yeah.
No, it's been fascinating to watch. I think the craziest move was kind of right off the bat trading away Marcus Smart, who everyone saw as kind of the heart of that team and their defense and all that. And he's like, nope, he's gone. Like, I mean, that was a ballsy first big move, and it got him Porzingis and paid huge dividends. So,
and then bringing in Drew Holiday, who I've been high on since, you know, his days in the East with Philly.
Yeah.
That's how far back I go. I remember when the Pelicans were trying to move him, and I was pounding the table as Denver should have been at the front of that line to pull him in. And I'm still surprised and amazed that more teams weren't after his services. And then after Minnesota, and it seemed like everybody was like down on him again. And then he goes to Boston and fits in seamlessly with that lineup. So you saying he's a defensive player of the year just warmed my heart, Greg, because I do believe he's the best perimeter defender in the league. And his skill set and the way he can play that point around those stars and just act like it's no big deal is amazing.
Yeah.
Final thought on the NBA, Greg.
Go Kings.
You know what? I will say, like last season, not so much. The previous season, I was excited for the Kings. They were awesome.
The season before was way more fun than last season. Wasn't.
Although
the funny thing is, like last year, like they weren't bad. It wasn't a bad season. It was just a disappointing season because they had done so well and there was so much love, and they kind of took a step back, injuries and shot worse.
The Kings kicked the shit out of the Nuggets like every time they played. So last year,
yeah.
I don't want to see that anymore.
That's going to keep happening.
No,
that's going to keep happening.
Not at all.
I like the optimism.
I mean, Jokic is good, but he's no Sabonis.
Oh man,
easy now,
Damn.
easy.
Damn.
Greg, you and I have talked about that. If Sabonis can step up his not efficiency from the 3-point line because it was pretty solid, but he's
volume.
He's got to take more at the right times to be able to force those defenders to his advantage, and if he can do that.
So, I'm sure you watched a lot of preseason Kings basketball, Caleb, but just in case you missed a game or two, I'll just let you know. We saw several instances in the preseason where on the transition fast break, he's running the ball up like he often does, and he pulls up from the free throw line without hesitation, without slowing down, and just drilled it. And then 1 or 2 from 3. Like, he wasn't shooting great from 3, but like he was showing a lot less hesitation. Like last year, he would like wait, and then he would finally take it, right? He was doing a lot less of that and a lot more just kind of in the flow of things. And definitely, if they can keep that going, it can open up some things for him and the team as a whole. So I agree with you. I hope he does
Sabonis
more.
I think honestly his basketball IQ is wildly underrated, and his DNA should tell people to pay more attention, and for whatever reason they just don't yet.
Yeah.
But I think he's a top 10 IQ guy in the league right now, and it does amaze me that he doesn't get recognized for it more.
If you haven't watched Starting 5 on Netflix, one of the highlights of it is an interview with Kevin Garnett where he's talking about Arvydas Sabonis, Domantas' dad, and just does this impression of him in like the locker room. It's hilarious. Like I think it's like first episode, so like check that out. It's worth the time just for that impression from KG.
I mean, one of my favorite stories is Arvydas back in the day in an All-Star game, I believe it was, where he's just talking mad trash to the greats about how had he been in the league 10 years earlier.
It's the story. It's KG telling that story, doing an impression, and talking about like Arvydas like smoking a cigar in the locker room. And, like,
it's one of my favorite NBA stories of all time. And I think there's a reason you don't hear a lot of guys talk down on that, because I think they know.
They love it, and they know. They're like, that dude was the shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fellas, any other revelations you'd like to bring upon Greg?
I'm sure as the season goes on, I'll have more questions.
Right. That's it for the NBA. I mean, Greg, you're welcome to hang out. You're welcome to peace out. We're going to talk NFL next. It's up to you. You're welcome to stay or leave. It's all on you.
I'm going to duck out, but always a pleasure talking with you guys, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Appreciate you, my guy.
All right,
Appreciate
buddy.
You. Hey, by the way, congratulations, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the engagement.
Yes.
Appreciate it, everyone.
Again, it's all because of Pinky. Just don't forget that.
All good things go through Pinky. So
that's right. Let's go. All right, you be good, buddy.
All right.
Let's see it.
Man.
All right. NFL.
He talks so much, I'm already out of whiskey, boys. Already out of whiskey.
So much more.
An hour and a half in, like.
And not to mention, my team has been auto-drafted like 3 times.
That sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate my team, but I'm at the 8th spot, not at the, 1 or 2. All right. NFL talk. if anybody is still around. I mean, we still have some listeners. There's a couple out there. Gosh, we're
It's always good when we're surprised people are still listening to us, right?
Listen, we can talk about the Broncos and Saints game and get that over with, and we'll be happy about it. And then
I don't think we even need to mention it right now. There's bigger storylines to discuss.
Fair enough.
What's the storyline to discuss, Caleb?
I think there's a couple big ones right now. There are teams right now out there who I believe need to make a move. And I'm very interested to see what happens over the next week and a half, 2 weeks before the trade deadline. Detroit looking to get a pass rusher. The Chiefs, I believe, at this point have to find a number one. If not, they better find a really damn good number two. The Broncos are in the same situation. They need a wide receiver. In that vein, I don't think there's any wide receivers on the market at this point. And the reason I say that is because after what happened to St. Louis, after what happened to the LA Rams, and now Tampa Bay Buccaneers, any team that has wide receiver depth, I feel like are going to want to hold on to that depth at this point.
Here's the thing. None of T. Higgins is a great candidate to get traded. I think we'd agree with that. We've heard about that. But they're still in contention now. There's still 2 more weeks for the trade deadline. If they lose their next 2 games, I think he could be on that block because they don't want to pay him. Right. They just don't. They don't want to pay him. He's going to want Ayuk money at the very least.
And he's better than Ayuk, and he deserves it.
I think he is better than Ayuk, and he does deserve it. And I just don't know if there's I was listening to Denver Sports, and they were talking about T. Higgins. A lot of Denver guys want us to trade for T. Higgins. And one guy made a very valuable point. When you make a trade for a guy, you want a guy that's getting close to his second contract, right? If you pay the guy, you're paying him for what he's going to do, not what he's done. Right? That's a big deal. Where the Broncos are, the Broncos do need to trade for a wide receiver, Caleb. Great point. But they're in that weird spot. They're probably not going to the Super Bowl. They do have a way to make the playoffs. But if you trade for a guy, you got to trade for the right guy. You don't want a rental. They're not in a spot for a rental. A rental is a Super Bowl team. That's where you go get a rental. So they're in a weird spot. T. Higgins is not a rental, but I don't see the Bengals giving him up unless they're out of it, completely done. And they'd have to lose the next 2 games to get to that point. So there is news. Cooper Kupp is on the trade block. Teams have been calling. Do the Rams at 2 I think they're 2-5? Do they want to give him up? I saw on Twitter today, guys. I don't know if you guys saw it. Stafford to the Vikings was all over Twitter today.
I did not see that.
Why? That makes no sense.
I don't think it makes sense myself. Darnold's playing well enough. They lost that game by a last-second field goal. To me,
Go Lions.
Darnold's playing well enough. You don't need to give up assets and money for Darnold.
You're on the clock.
I don't think Kupp's the number one. And that's where I think the Rams lost their trade value. Plus his injury history. Nobody's going to want to pay and take on the cost of what it would be to get him. I had 2 names before last night that I thought would be moves you can make, even the Chiefs, to add depth. And it's guys that were buried on the depth chart, but had huge potential that just hasn't been realized because they've been buried on the depth chart. And I went through every team's list, and these are the only 2 I could really come up with where I thought teams might move them. And again, this was before last night. And that's Trey Palmer out of Tampa, because he's shown some flashes of brilliance and being able to make some plays. Maybe not a number 1 by any means. Not even maybe. Not a number 1 by any means, but could add a nice depth piece. But now with Evans and Godwin both out, there's no way Tampa's moving on from him. The other one is a rookie that was just drafted, and I was surprised he hadn't seen the field yet, and now I don't see any way he sees the field, and that's Malachi Corley with the Jets, who I could see, going to the Chiefs and being a lot more effective than Xavier Worthy or Sky Moore based on what we saw from, what he did in college. There's a reason he's not playing for the Jets. It could be Rodgers isn't a big fan of rookies. It could be that the learning curve was too steep for him. I don't know. But he's buried on the depth chart. He's not going to see the field. It's a move that you could possibly make. But as I go around the rest of the league, unless you want to overpay, I don't see anybody else moving anyone.
And
Higgins,
no way. It doesn't make sense.
Higgins would be amazing in Kansas City, but there's zero chance that the Bengals would move him to Kansas City, no matter what Kansas City paid.
What does it normally happen? We get excited about the trade deadline. What normally happens, Caleb?
In the NFL, nothing. Normally, nothing happens.
Nothing. Adams and Cooper, that was probably our trade deadline splashes. And that was weeks before the trade deadline happens. There is some movement, maybe, around Max Crosby and Myles Garrett.
Potentially, and that's where Detroit should be all in and willing to overpay.
Right. I'm overpaying for Crosby, though.
I think what San Francisco is proving to everybody is when they say you have to take advantage of your window, you better damn sure take advantage of that window. And look, I've been on the bus wagon for years now that says you go all in at every opportunity you have if you think you have a chance for the Super Bowl, because I'll take one win and rebuild for 10 and run that schematic, that scenario over and over and over again for my franchise. And I'm amazed more teams don't do that. If you come out, and I truly believe this, you come out as a team, as a front office and say, here's our strategy and this is what we're going to try to do, and you do it, the fan base will always be behind you. But if you continuously make moves to just stay competitive, but not truly at a level that you can win it all, your fan base is going to continuously get frustrated with you, a la Dallas. And I'm even at the point now, and I know it'll never happen, but if Dallas was really smart, because you just paid Dak, you would trade every valuable piece you have right now, and you would go back into the draft, because if there's one thing Dallas has proven they're good at is building through the draft and getting your own guys. You move CD, you move Parsons, and you get as much value as you can. That offensive line is getting old. They have nothing up the middle when it comes to the defense. I think Dallas isn't even going to make the playoffs at this point. But nobody's talking about them as being sellers. And that's because Jerry will never do that. But he also won't ever go all in like he said he was going to do in the offseason. And this constant doubling down on this we couldn't have gotten Derrick Henry thing is just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And the reason fans know it's absurd now is because they watched what the Rams did to win a Super Bowl.
So I think Rich Eisen said it best. If you sign CeeDee Lamb before a couple weeks before the season, if you sign Dak a while before the season, you can maneuver and make some money available for Derrick Henry. So don't say that we didn't have the money. Right? You can move some money around if you know what you have to move around. So, and it was funny, like Jerry Jones, unprovoked, brought up Derrick Henry and then went on a 5-minute rant on Derrick Henry.
Why?
Because he's trying to show that they're right. They were right by not signing him. He actually said Derrick Henry wouldn't have gotten the ball as much in our offense because we're not as good. Like he said that. It was crazy. It's crazy. And Jerry, I'm just like, Jerry, just stop talking, man. There's a lot of NFL owners you don't hear anything from. most of the really good organizations, you never hear from the owner.
I got nothing with Jerry voicing and talking and being a mouthpiece. I don't have anything against that. What I have a thing against is when you say things publicly and then your actions don't back your words. And that's Jerry's issue continuously. I think the other thing I'm just fascinated by at this point, and I've made my position very clear. I think Russell is the beginning of the end as far as the Steelers go. And it looked like I'm going to have to eat a lot of crow after that game. However, Russ did not play well. You take away 2 miraculous catches by George Pickens and a diving, beautiful one-handed catch by Freiermuth.
Look,
and Pittsburgh gets smoked.
Look, let's be honest. Tell me you didn't watch the game, right? Because if you look at the box score, he had a pretty good game.
Yeah.
If you watch the game, you're like, well, that's the same Russ I saw in Denver. Like, all I saw is the Jets didn't put any good pressure on him. Like, there were good outlets for Russ to get rid of the ball. And if he didn't hit the outlet, he just put it in the dirt. Like, and they were bad.
That was the other thing I was questioning the whole time is why weren't you running this offense for Justin Fields? The amount of just rollouts and dump offs that they gave Russ was absurd. And they were not doing those easy decisions for Justin Fields at all. So I got a lot of question marks going forward with Pittsburgh that I'm either going to be eating a whole lot of crow or it's going to come time to where people are going to be like, oh, why did they go away from Justin Fields?
Pittsburgh is going to make it into the playoffs and they're going to get smoked the first round.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I believe.
I'm very curious on how this plays out. And I'll tell you right now, I'm actually blown away at the amount of teammates who have continuously said amazing things about Justin Fields and his leadership. And that goes a long way in a locker room. So there may still be hope for Justin Fields to grow into a starting quarterback. Whether we ever see the potential that I thought he had is probably very slim at this point. And I'm going to have to start eating a little bit of crow on what I believe Justin Fields could become. So be it. But I am blown away at what teammates are saying about his character and the way he's handled this situation. So, you know what? More power to the guy for being able to handle this as a professional, if you will. But, man, Steelers are not going to be able to get that lucky every week with Russ throwing the ball. So what happens over the next couple of weeks is going to be very interesting.
Well, let's run it down real quick, Caleb. Steelers play the Giants Monday night coming up.
Really good defense. Really good defense that can put pressure on the ball, right?
Although I think the Steelers defense will create turnovers and put their offense in good position. They're going to win that game.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
The Giants defense is not a slouch. But the Steelers defense will make the Giants offense look bad, and they'll put in they'll get some good work in. Steelers and the Commanders.
I like the Commanders in that game.
Will Jaden Daniels be healthy though?
I like the Commanders.
I don't think it matters.
But I do. I will say this. The Commanders, if you look at their schedule, they have not played a lot of top 10 defenses so far. Steelers are a top 10 defense. I don't know what will happen when they play a top 10 defense. They've done really good at running the ball, protecting Jaden, and allowing Jaden to make plays. When a defense is smothering you like the Steelers can do, that can make it tougher. I think that's a tough ball game. I would still say the Commanders should win that game, but the Steelers defense, they've got a top 5 defense. I think it's top 5 that they really could,
yes,
as the identity of the team, keep them in ball games that they really shouldn't be in based on their offensive inefficiencies. They play the Ravens the following game. I think we'd agree the Ravens should smoke them.
Absolutely.
They play the Browns. They're gonna crush the Browns.
They should.
They play the Bengals.
The Bengals should win that game, but You know,
it's just like
the
one of those-
Bengals can't stop anybody on defense, and
I could see them splitting with the Bengals.
Sure.
It's just which one do they split, right?
sure.
Then they got the Browns again in Pittsburgh this time.
Pinky, you're on the clock.
Probably going to smash them. Who's on the clock?
You are.
Damn it.
Sorry, guys. We're trying to do a fantasy basketball draft at the same time because we threw something together last minute. Stick with us. We apologize. But yeah, Pinky, where you're going is them in the playoffs. If Russ surprises us and can return to more of his Seattle form, Pittsburgh's going to be really dangerous. I just don't see how that happens.
They got the Browns. Then they have the Eagles. Tough game. Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. And they're 5-2 right now. So they're making the playoffs. I'd be surprised if they're not the 5 seed, or they even win their division, depending on how Baltimore finishes out. I think Baltimore looks like one of the best teams in the league right now, even despite the record.
Oh, you're
But if they finish out strong, like they could win the division. The Steelers could. I just see a couple losses.
We lost you there for a second. What were you saying about Baltimore?
I mean, Baltimore should win the division. They're playing one of the best teams in the league, but Steelers have a game on them right now. So anything's possible. But Russell's fool's gold. I feel like if you watch that game and went through that game going, oh man, Russ is going to do something, you're just mistaken. You're just mistaken.
First couple of drives they went 3 and out, and everyone was calling for Wilson's head already. So like,
Justin Fields was warming up on the sideline after the first 2 series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I love Tomlin. I've been on record saying that before, and his quote after the game is pure gold. It doesn't get much better than his one-liners. I mean, when you're asked, you know, how do you feel? I can't remember exactly how the question was worded, but basically it's like, you know, how did you come about the decision to put Russ back in, or how do you feel about it? And he's like, that's why I get paid the big bucks. You know, like just short, sweet, and simple. Like the dude is just a legend. I love
see you up.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I could be eating a lot of crow, or we could be sitting here and going, this is why you should have kept Fields in, because his growth was continuing. It wasn't like Fields was getting worse or playing poorly. He was playing solid ball, but it wasn't ball that he was winning games for them. But I don't think Russ is going to win games for you either. And everybody's like, oh, that's why we put in Russ, because it's opened up the passing game. Again, I'll say it again. There were 3 lucky catches that made Russ's night and that game completely
awesome. Awesome catches.
Yeah. And you want to take it a step further, Garrett Wilson doesn't have that ball bounce off his shoulder for an interception. That game could look a lot different as well. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't have had things go more right for Pittsburgh in that game than what they did. And I think that's the issue I'm going to maintain until proven otherwise.
No doubt. What other weekend games do we want to talk about? What else happened that we're let's see.
Nothing. I mean, the Lions and the Vikings game was still the game of the weekend.
That was the game of the weekend, which is what we thought going into it. 2 really good teams.
Absolutely.
I left that game going, they play again, and it could easily be a different outcome. You know, absolutely. Vikings are up 10-0. Lions come back with 21 straight points, right? And then the Vikings are having to play catch up, and then they do play catch up, and they make it a game. They actually end up getting a turnover, and then they score, and it's 29-28. Awesome game. Awesome game.
3 best teams in the NFC right now are in the AFC North. I mean, the NFC North.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Without a doubt. Packers, Lions, and Vikings, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. and they all have to play each other some more. They cannibalize each other. I think we're going to get good, great football games. That may be the most fun games to watch.
And let's be honest,
get together.
As it stands right now, all 4 NFC North teams would be in the playoffs. And if they continue to play the way they are, regardless of cannibalizing themselves, all 4 will probably make the playoffs based on the way the other NFC teams are going.
I don't think we've ever seen that happen.
We haven't. And we predicted it 2
division?
years ago for the AFC West, and the AFC West fell on their face really bad. And only one team made the playoffs.
The only reason I don't see that happening is I do think the Commanders and the Eagles in the East, I think both of those teams have a good shot at making it based on their schedules. So,
you've got Seattle. You've got Seattle out west, and San Francisco, if they get even a little bit healthy, is probably still going to make the playoffs. So there's reasons,
on the clock.
There's reasons for why it won't happen, but it's got a good chance, unlike seasons past where we've kind of had this conversation. So that's going to be a great storyline to follow as the season progresses.
Let's see. What did we have? What else do we have? I mean, that was the best game of the weekend. We had Saquon just giving it to the Giants. That was awesome. Packers Texans, which was actually on, was probably the next best game of the weekend. With
that was a great game.
Packers taking the lead, Texans getting the lead late, and then Packers getting back down and kicking a field goal to win. So that was a really good game. I was really shocked at how poorly CJ Stroud and the Texans' offensive line was. That offensive line was awful against the Packers. Awful.
Absolutely.
There's not CJ Stroud should not have a football game that he has 87 yards passing. Like, that just shouldn't happen.
Mm-mm.
So that tells me, and I don't think we've had a high opinion of the Green Bay Packers defense as a whole. Like, they've been okay, but not great.
I mean, I've continued to say that their talent on defense should be a top 5 defense, but they always underperform. So you don't know what you're getting week to week with them. I will say, to me, and I've kind of been on this thought for a little while now, Tank Dell isn't any more than your third option. And Stefan Diggs is no longer a true one, and it shows how much they miss Nico Collins.
They miss
that's what I saw.
Right. I mean, that's their deep threat. That's their guy that catches that 40-yarder, gets them down into field goal range at the very least. Like,
not even their deep threat. Yes, he is the deep threat, but he's also their possession. I mean, 8 to 9 catches a game. He's getting 11 to 12 targets a game from Stroud. Stroud feeds him the ball even if he's not open. He's that dude for Stroud. And when you lose that, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now, I will say the one bright spot that the Texans can take away and move forward with is the fact that their run game is actually way better than I anticipated with Joe Mixon.
Absolutely.
So if they can keep that going, Nico comes back healthy, they could pick off like nothing was ever wrong.
I mean, they're winning that division. I don't think there's any question about that. They're winning.
No, they're winning the division. Yeah, absolutely. But it's how competitive can you be come playoff time? That's the real question here. And right now, they're looking like they're just still a step below where they need to be to make a run.
Faux show. 49ers played the Chiefs. That happened. And I mean, the Chiefs are just pretty much the offense doesn't look amazing. They've had quite a few injuries. It makes sense, but they keep plugging along and doing enough to win. And their defense is probably not getting enough flowers as they should. The defense is playing really damn good. Like, really damn good.
I still thought they were just kind of slow playing Travis Kelce. I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to move towards he might actually be done. And not done in the sense that he still can't play, but done in the sense that he's
not
not the
making big
dude that's
plays.
going to be able to hook up with Patrick Mahomes and win you some games
No.
like he has been in the past.
I mean, he's turning 35 sometime this season.
I get it.
tight ends,
Age, and you never know when that cliff's going to
real.
hit. But it's starting to look like that cliff might have hit, unfortunately.
And again, I think at this point he's at that point where he's on TV now. He's got a game show on Prime. Like he's in Grotesque on FX. I don't want to say like his other things he's been doing takes priority over football. I don't think he's that guy, but I feel like that's taken some of the time from his training and what he could do. And I think it's a good chance, win or lose, that he's done after this season. I really do. So, but the Chiefs came out and they like that defense is just so damn good. I'm sitting there as a Broncos fan and I'm just like, shit, that defense is playing so well. Like, what is our offense going to do against that defense? Like, I think our defense can play that offense. Like, we can do things. But I don't know if we can move the ball right now on that defense. That defense is playing
anyway.
Fantastic. And the one thing that's crazy is outside of Chris Jones, they just don't have an alpha pass rusher. If like they had an alpha pass rusher outside of Jones, they would be one of the scariest defenses you've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think we're just seeing the ultimate form of supreme coordinator, not a head coach. And that's what Kansas City's D coordinator is. And he just is similar to what I believe about Vance Joseph. They are just really good when it comes to scheming up a game plan to minimize what the other team's offense is capable of, regardless of the names on the back of the jersey that they have to operate with. And when you have coaches a la Sean McVay on the offensive side that can scheme regardless of talent, and then you have some talent to scheme with, it makes it really hard to do something against them.
Fair enough.
So it's really weird. Ravens look to be hitting their stride recently.
Finally.
And they look really tough right now.
Let's be serious for a moment, Pinky. You still think he's a running quarterback? You still think he's a running back?
I said last year he threw a lot better last year than he had before. Like the
Not what I asked you, because even last year you said he was still
I'll be telling you, I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon until he shows it in the playoffs. And again, we've got a lot of games to get to that point. I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
Throwing against one of the worst pass defenses in the league, cool. Most of the guys were wide open. Like they got no pressure on them, and they have backups playing in coverage. I'm not going to give him flowers all of a sudden because of it. I'm just not.
He hasn't just been doing it last game though. He's been doing it all season.
He did it good last season too, and I said that. I already said that. But again, at the end of the day, he has not done it in the playoffs. Period. So he hasn't shown me that he can be that guy that wins from the pocket when needed. Now he's going to have a great opportunity. They should make it to the playoffs, and he should have an opportunity to show that. And I hope he does. If he does, they might beat the Chiefs. I want that. I want that more than anything. And then I will eat all of the crow you put. I'll put the crow pie. I will eat it. I'll eat it all. But for me, he's at the point now where, he's shown things in the regular season. He hasn't shown in the playoffs. I need the playoff. I need playoff Lamar to show he can win games from the pocket. And then I'll give him those flowers.
All right.
But he played, he threw really well against one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Kudos to him. Like that, it is what it is. The Bucs defense made Bo Nix look good. I mean, come on now. So, I'm just saying, like it's
second half they made Bo Nix look good.
No, he started out the game looking good. That's why they got up so quick in the first half. Actually, in the second half, they really didn't do much. Is the first half that the Bucs were like, I don't know what to do, and they didn't get any pass rush on him. And they did the same with Lamar. They got no pass rush. They actually held Derrick Henry really good for the first half, but they could not stop Lamar from throwing the ball. And all of a sudden, Bateman's amazing, and Mark Andrews is amazing again. I hope he continues. I hope he makes me eat crow. If he makes me eat crow, the Ravens are in the Super Bowl. We're all happy. We don't have to worry about the Chiefs.
I mean, if there's one thing that they've done this year that's completely different than every other year, is something that I've been screaming for the last 3 years. And that's the amount of time that they've had Andrews and Likely on the field at the same time and used them within the pass game at the same time.
They've started to do that. Hopefully.
And I think that's been a huge unlock for that offensive pass game. And then they're finally getting the ball to Bateman in opportune situations, and Zay Flowers has taken a huge step forward. So the weapons are finally there, and they're using the weapons. So it's not something you see as often as it should happen across the league, but they're doing it, and it's looking really good. So, yeah.
Hopefully it continues. Again, I want the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl. Nobody wants that. And I've always had a soft spot for the Ravens because I love Ray Lewis. He's one of my favorite players of all time. So
Lamar Jackson's my new break the curse guy. That's where I'm going to hope and hang my hat on. I need him to ball out this year.
Fingers crossed, man. I will tell you right now, if you like watching the Chiefs play football is so hard because they run the football really well. They play good defense. So as an old school guy, like it looks good. But everything else just looks bad. And I don't want to see that in a Super Bowl. I just don't. I want to see something. And I want to see something new. So I hope that they fall on their face. And looking around the AFC right now, as good as the Chiefs defense is, the only team that probably could beat them right now is the Ravens. So like I said, nobody wants Lamar to prove me wrong more than me. I will get a Lamar Jackson jersey if they beat the Chiefs in the playoffs.
All right.
I will put it out there and I'll be like, Lamar's my guy. Love him. Let's go. So
let's talk about the Chiefs real quick. I threw it up on the page the other day. They have a legit path, in my mind, outside of Buffalo, to see an undefeated regular season. And I think if they get past that Buffalo game with a W, I personally don't see how they don't finish the regular season undefeated. Because at that point, they're chasing some serious history. And I think that team is full of a bunch of dudes who are all about etching their name in stone for all of eternity, you know? And Broncos fans, you can say what you want, but as a sports fan, I'm all about seeing history, and I'm all about seeing something epic. And regardless of my own fandom, it would be hard for me to root against that.
Right. I can see that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll be right back, boys.
Robert, I know there was something you had thrown out there today, and it's definitely a conversation we should have. This is a season where I feel like is right up there with a few others in history, and it's fairly rare when we see this amount of injuries
across
to top guys in the league.
It's testing the mettle of some people. I mean, it's been quite interesting to see because injuries make or break a team at the end of the day. Because, I mean, as an example, I can't name, besides Sun God, sure, Jared Goff, but anyone that bleeds for Detroit more than anyone, Aiden Hutchinson. And when they lost him, they lost a piece of the Detroit Lions, period.
Absolutely.
And the same could be said again last night when you're watching the Bucks and Godwin goes out with a dislocated ankle. you lose some of the spirit of your team in those cases, and that can really derail your season.
I mean, for fantasy purposes, Godwin was the second highest scoring wide receiver in the league.
I mean,
so they lost a really, really important piece to their team.
It really changes the landscape for a lot of things, and it introduces a lot of different conversations now. Because again, at the beginning of the season, we were like, shit, the Rams have a good chance of going back this year. I mean, and now Cooper Kupp's up for trade. They're injury ridden to all hell. Like, it is not a topic of conversation we ever thought to be having, and we're having it right now. And that really, it sucks, but it also really puts into perspective of, okay, so now what are these teams really made of, and who's going to go the distance?
Absolutely. And then you start talking about depth. I mean, look at San Francisco. They're still in it because they were fairly deep, but they were very top heavy. Absolutely. You lose Ayuk. Samuel, with his illness, pneumonia-like symptoms, fluid in his lungs, he misses a couple games. That's a huge blow. CMC's already out. Yes, Mason has looked good in his absence, but he's not CMC. You brought up the Rams. They're missing Puka as well. They lost their top two receivers.
Yep.
Tampa Bay also lost Evans. He's out. You look at Dallas missing Parsons for extended periods of time, DeMarcus Lawrence for extended periods of time. You go around the league and you start seeing the amount of injuries that teams are having to their top end talent. Absolutely. And it, like you said, Robert, it completely changes the landscape of what we're looking at. Tampa was looking like a playoff team and competing for the NFC South. And now missing those two wide receivers, I don't see how Atlanta doesn't just kind of run away with that division.
Yeah, absolutely.
San Francisco, if they continue their injuries, Seattle probably looks like the favorite. But now DK is going to be out for a period of time. How long, we're not sure. But a sprained MCL, that's no lateral movement. And as a wide receiver, you're not playing.
Those are grade 1.
Right, but it's still grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Everybody's body bounces back differently from those. So you could say 2 weeks out, it could be 3 or 4 before he feels like he can truly move the way he needs to be back on the field.
You're on the clock, Caleb.
So there's these giant question marks with teams that were supposed to be competitive and at the top, that if they don't get guys back or they get them back too late, they could be already outside the window of contention. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be the biggest storyline over the next 3 to 4 weeks of who can get healthier quicker and put a game or two together back in the win column. And if a lot of these teams can't do it, we're going to see that guarantee 6-team turnover for the playoffs every year like we do in the NFL. And this is part of the reason why we see that.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Give me just a sec.
There aren't really too many exciting games this week.
Yeah, I think the game schedule is pretty
kind of duds.
Lax. Man, these are all turds.
Yeah, these games are awful this week. Like, I don't.
Bears Commanders and Bills Seahawks are the best 2 games of the week.
It's a snooze fest.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, boys. Final thoughts.
Dude, I'm Penguin, man. Some of the best TV. Like, I can't express it enough. And what Caleb actually was posting it this afternoon. Blade has been pushed off to an indefinite time, which sucks. However, Caleb made a very good point as, what happened to the creativity for some of these things, and you're taking risks. And the best example, and I will die on this hill and everyone can say go to hell for it, but I mean, when you have the Guardians of the Galaxy put in everyone's faces. Everyone's like, this is a fucking dud. It's the flavor of the week. Chris Pratt's not going to be a good superhero. Sorry. Like, that Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the staples of a superhero movie. And they need to get back to quality over quantity. And I'm completely okay with Blade being pushed off if it means we're going to get a good Blade. If ever we get a good Blade.
I think Guardians is a good example because the way they were used within the universe, the inclusion with the god-awful last Thor movie put a dent in the overall Guardians legacy, unfortunately. And then you talk about Blade. I personally never liked the idea of the reboot, especially with Wesley Snipes still being available to reprise his role. There is one Blade to rule them all, is the verbiage I chose earlier. And I think bringing that back with somebody new, I just didn't like. When there's so many other storylines that you already had out there, I think forcing Blade back into the MCU was a poor decision in the first place. On the same level as doing She-Hulk and some of the other things they put out that just there was no reason for.
You're not wrong. Not wrong at all.
Pinky, what are your final thoughts, my guy?
Well, excited to see the Broncos play this weekend. That should be fun. And then the real football starts. Gonna go see Venom Thursday night. It's gonna be awful. I'm already expecting it to be a turd. But we'll see how that turns out. I'm not a huge Tom Hardy fan. I know a lot of people are. I don't get it. The guy says like 10 words in a movie and everybody loves him. But this movie's going to be bad.
I love Tom Hardy. I don't like any of the Venom movies.
The Venom movies suck, except the first one was decent. The rest of them are awful.
I just don't think Tom Hardy's that great. He's just not. Sorry.
Basketball's back.
Basketball's
back. I am stoked. And on a little bit higher level, I got two final thoughts. One, I am excited for college basketball to start because I cannot wait to watch Cooper Flagg. Look, I'm a North Carolina guy and cannot be rooting for Duke, but I'm going to be rooting for Cooper Flagg because the talent on this dude is absurd. And if you followed us at all, I've been talking about this guy for 3 years now. So the level at which he plays, his IQ, and the fact that he got such praise from the Team USA guys when he was able to scrimmage with them before the Olympics, big things are coming for this young man. And I cannot wait to see what he does to college basketball, because we're about to see a guy who plays the entire game. And part of the thing that college basketball lacks is, let me rephrase this differently. One of the issues with college basketball is stagnation, especially within offensive schemes and coaching in college basketball. And Cooper Flagg's going to break all those molds real bad. The other thing that people need to be aware of is Friday, the World Series starts. And we got our matchup that we were hoping for.
Baby.
We got our matchup. We're going to see Ohtani, Judge, Soto, Betts. We're going to see all the top stars, and it is going to be awesome.
Should be good. That's what we were looking for.
On that note, everybody, we appreciate you more than you know for supporting us in any shape, way, or form that you do. If you have those moments to share with your loved ones, family, friends, inner circle, do not take those moments for granted. Cherish them and jump on them at every opportunity. Till next week, or if you want to discuss anything else in between, let us know. We're out. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute,